Hello all, I'm Julia, and today I'm going to share some critical reasoning tips with you to help you succeed on evaluate the argument questions. These questions, like many popular critical reasoning styles, rely heavily on identifying necessary assumptions that the argument needs to work. What sets evaluate the argument questions apart is the structure of the answer choices. Evaluate questions will present us with an argument, plan, or proposal, and then ask us what information would help us to evaluate whether the argument is valid or whether the plan or proposal will work. The most common evaluate answer choices are going to be questions that can be answered either yes or no. The way to test these answer choices is to see if they affect the argument differently depending on the yes or no answer. For example, the city of Watercress has been experiencing an increase in traffic congestion over the last few years as the population has grown. A neighboring city was able to successfully reduce traffic congestion by expanding their public transportation system. Watercress should invest in expanding public transportation to reduce traffic congestion. In deciding whether the plan will work as predicted, it would be most helpful to determine which of the following: whether the majority of Watercress residents currently use public transportation, or whether expanding public transportation will significantly decrease the number of cars on the road. These two answer choices lend themselves to the yes-no test. Let's test them and see how the plan is affected. If the majority of Watercress residents do currently use public transportation, how does that affect the plan's expected success versus if the majority of residents don't currently use public transportation? Well, the majority of residents can use something and there could still be room for more to use it. Whether we answer this first question with a yes or a no, it doesn't have a clearly different outcome. How about if the proposed expansion will significantly decrease the number of cars on the road or not? If it will significantly decrease the number, then that would have a positive effect on the traffic congestion issue. If it would not significantly decrease the number of cars on the road, though, this plan is unlikely to work well for Watercress. Thanks to the yes-no test, we can see that B is the better answer. But what about answer choices that can't be answered with a yes or a no? These alternatives take a couple of different forms. We'll start with answer choices that can be answered in one of two ways that aren't yes or no. It's often easiest to test these with two extremes. For instance, exercise has been shown to improve brain function. Students should be required to participate in a school sport so that they get plenty of exercise, which will lead to better academic performance. Which of the following would be most helpful in evaluating the proposal? How many top-performing students currently participate in a school sport? To test this answer, we'll pick two extremes. Let's say on the one side, 0 top-performing students currently participate in a school sport. On the other side, most or all of the top performers participate currently. Either way, the requirement could lead to better academic performance. Even top performers might have room to improve. How often do student athletes have to sacrifice valuable study time to meet sports commitments? Let's test this choice with rarely and frequently. If the answer is rarely, then requiring students to participate in a school sport probably won't cut into their study time too much. If the answer is frequently, however, then it's very likely that sports commitments will cut into study time, in which case the new requirement may not lead to the intended result of better academic performance at all. Here are some templates that you can use for these answer types. What proportion? 1/10 versus 9/10. How common? Very common or very rare? How likely? Very likely or it definitely won't happen? What ratio? 100 to 1 or 1 to 100? How close? 1 meter away or 1,000 kilometers away? To what extent? To a great extent or very little? How different are two things? Completely different or exactly the same? And how much stronger? Way stronger or not at all stronger? What about when we're presented with more open-ended questions? These situations will be handled on a case-by-case basis, but with a little practice, it's easy to see the kind of tweaks that make them more testable. Let's look at an example. Caffeine is a stimulant that temporarily increases productivity. Coffee is an affordable and readily available source of caffeine. Companies that invest in providing coffee for their employees will see a good return on that investment, as their employees who drink coffee every morning will be more productive than those who do not. In evaluating the argument, it would be most important to know how productivity is measured. This isn't a question that can be easily answered in a binary format. After all, there are many ways to measure productivity, but caffeine increases productivity. We know this from the first sentence of the argument. Do we need to know how productivity is being measured for that to hold true? We do not. The answer to this question would provide related information to the argument, but not relevant information. How about what the side effects of drinking coffee are? There are a couple of different ways to test this question. First, try to pick a side effect that would affect the argument one way, and then try to pick a side effect that would affect it in a different way. Let's say one is jitters and the other is severe cardiovascular effects. Being jittery isn't likely to undo the gains in productivity that are offered by caffeine. However, someone who experiences severe cardiovascular effects from coffee consumption might be both temporarily more productive, as is stated, and less productive over the long term. Another choice is to pick two broad categories of answer choices, such as negligible side effects and side effects that will require time off of work or medical intervention. Negligible side effects would strengthen the argument. Severe side effects that would require time off of work to deal with the fallout could hurt productivity more than the coffee temporarily improves it. The answer to this question could help us evaluate the argument. The last answer type I'm going to cover will be pretty familiar, as it's not a question at all, but a statement like the answer choices of most critical reasoning questions. The only difference between an evaluate the argument question with statement answers and a strengthen or weaken the argument question is that an evaluate question won't say which direction the argument needs to be affected. Have a look. A company is planning to switch from human customer service representatives to an AI chatbot to improve customer satisfaction. They reason that the AI chatbot can handle multiple customers simultaneously and are available 24/7, unlike human representatives who can only handle one customer at a time and require breaks. Which of the following, if true, would be most helpful in determining whether switching to an AI chatbot will improve customer satisfaction? Let's look at our mini example answers. Customer service representatives spend an average of 1 minute longer per customer interaction than the chatbot. An average longer interaction time might seem like it would be helpful in determining customer satisfaction, but a minute isn't much difference, and human interaction typically involves some pleasantries that AI interaction might skip over. Also, I don't personally think I would notice an interaction time difference of even a few minutes if I called to resolve an issue and it was resolved. Compare that to this one. In a recent pilot program, 70% of the company's customers who interacted with the AI chatbot had to later contact human representatives to resolve their issues. I would absolutely notice if I had to call a company back because my issue wasn't resolved correctly the first time. Choice B implies that a strong majority of customers aren't able to resolve their issue with the chatbot at all and end up needing to talk to a human representative anyway, but now with more steps involved. Even handling multiple customers at once and being available 24/7 isn't much of a benefit if the chatbot can't effectively resolve customer issues. So B is much more helpful in evaluating the argument. I hope that getting familiar with these different potential answer styles and how to test their effect on the argument will allow you to feel confident when faced with evaluate the argument questions. They are nothing new, just a slightly different use of your developed skills. So keep up the good work, and I will see you next time.